Drones have had a lasting impact on many industries. Real estate is certainly one of them. Unfortunately, hiring a drone pilot isn't as easy as hiring a regular photographer. Drones share the skies with regular aircraft. This airspace is governed and regulated by the FAA. FAA regulations are not an exciting topic to speak about, but there are a few things that you need to know about using drones in real estate. To avoid hiring the wrong pilot who might put you at risk, our simple objectives for today are to learn the definition of commercial operation, learn how to confirm a drone pilot is licensed and professional, learn about drone registration, and learn what special permissions are required to fly in an area like Vero Beach with an active airport. In August of 2016, the FAA introduced Part 107. Part 107 is the rules and regulations that govern drone operations. The FAA defined a few things that are important for us to know. They established pilot licensing criteria, they defined what a commercial operation is, and they created the rules to be followed for a commercial pilot. What is a commercial drone operation? The simple FAA definition is any operation that results in compensation or any operation that should result in compensation is considered a commercial operation. The FAA has stated that the compensation does not have to be monetary. The compensation does not even have to be provided. This closes the loophole, allowing someone to believe that they can fly commercially without a license if they are not getting paid. Anyone performing commercial flight must be licensed. Here's a quick question. An agent has a drone and only wishes to obtain aerial images of their own listings. Does this person still require a license? Flying without a license when you are required to have one could result in fines up to $5,000 for each flight. The FAA usually only issues a written warning for the first offense to a pilot. However, if you hired this unlicensed pilot, did you know that you have liability? The FAA has confirmed in writing that realtors have liability for hiring unlicensed pilots by causing the drone operation that violated regulations. While a pilot may receive a fine for unlicensed operation or other regulation violation, the agent or agency who caused the flight, as in hired the pilot, could be hit with an $11,000 fine. How would they know? The evidence isn't hard to find. It's actually your job to put it out there. The FAA receives many complaints and they do investigate. They actually do check out YouTube, agency websites, agent websites, and social media for aerial videos and photos. If they have a question, they will come to the agent or agency who posted the photo or video for answers. How do we know if someone is licensed? Prior to the licensing requirements in 2016, the FAA was issuing exemptions to drone operators who wish to fly commercially. These were called 333 exemptions. Once the actual license requirements came out, the FAA announced that they were not reissuing 333 exemptions. All these exemptions were permissible until they expired, which they all should have expired by now. If a pilot claims to have an exemption, ask to see it to verify the validation dates on the document. If they claim to have a license, you can ask to see that as well, or you could check on the FAA website, faa.gov. Like most things created by the government, you will have to jump through a few navigational hoops to get there. First, highlight licenses and certificates on the menu bar. A drop-down menu will appear. Click on Airman Certification. On the right side of the next page, click on Search Airman Certificate Information. This will bring you to a form. Fill out as much as you can. A last name and a state should be enough. Once completed, click Search. You will see any matching search results listed below the form. Click on the name you would like to see. The pilot's information will be displayed. Down below is an area for certificates. In this area you will find any license or ratings the person may have. You are specifically looking for remote pilot. This is what they call a drone license. Click on the remote pilot box to display any comments or notes. If the pilot does not have a license, the search results will display as no record found. For your convenience, I have added a direct link to the license search page on my website, www.dronevisionimaging.com. Simply click Check License on the menu bar, and the FAA search page will open in a new window. We know the drone pilot must be licensed. Additionally, the drone itself needs to be registered with the FAA if it weighs between about a half pound up to 55 pounds. This covers pretty much every drone used commercially. The pilot will have a registration card, and the registration number must be on the drone as well. Registration allows the FAA to keep track of how many drones are in the sky, and it provides a means of identification should the drone be found after an incident. Registration is mandatory, and it only costs $5. Ask to see a registration card. I would be skeptical of anyone using an unregistered drone. So you've confirmed your drone pilot is licensed and the drone is registered. Because of the area we live in, there is another regulation of drone usage that is even more important than licensing. No licensed drone pilot may operate commercially within 5 miles of the Vero Beach Airport without FAA review and permission for each flight. The shaded area represents a 5-mile radius around the Vero Beach Airport. As you can see, this area covers a good portion of Vero, west out to 74th, and most of the island. Currently, if you hire a pilot to shoot a listing in this area, a form must be submitted to the FAA detailing the location, date requested, altitude to be flown, duration of the flight, and an outline of emergency procedures. The FAA will review the application and decide whether to approve or deny it. The FAA is overwhelmed regarding these authorization requests. I have waited as little as 5 days for approval to over 4 months for an approval. For this reason, most pilots do not bother getting the proper permission, and that is not a good thing. Why does a licensed pilot have to get permission? The image on the right is a snapshot of air traffic in and around Vero Beach at that moment in time. Each aircraft image is a separate aircraft, not a flight path. The aircraft around the airport fly low as they transition to and from the airport. Living here, we have all seen low-flying aircraft. Besides having one of the busiest flight schools here, we now also have commercial airline traffic with Elite Airways. Imagine how easy it could be to interfere with an aircraft by flying a drone. These are the reasons the FAA has strict regulations on flying a drone in these areas. If a pilot, licensed or not, gets caught flying commercially within this area without permission, the fines imposed will far exceed those previously mentioned. 5 or 6 figure fines are not unheard of. What do you think the first words out of a pilot's mouth will be if they have an incident? I am working for, insert your agency name here, taking real estate pictures for, insert your name here. It's your job to get exposure for your services and for your listings, but you don't want to make the news being associated with something like this. Airspace violations are the incidents you want to stay far away from. Make sure your service provider has the proper authorization and documentation to prove it. Any guess on the highest fine to date? $1.9 million. There was no accident or injury involved in this case. It was simply about repeated airspace violations. There are 2 types of permissions the FAA issues to allow someone to fly in this type of airspace. There's an airspace authorization and an airspace waiver. The airspace authorization is the permission to fly at a specific location as previously mentioned. This is the most common situation. You asked me to get images for 125 Main Street, which happens to be within 5 miles of the airport. I have to submit an application and wait for the authorization. While the FAA someday hopes to provide an instant response to those requests, I have already mentioned that this can take some time. The airspace waiver is an exemption from having to request permission for each flight. The FAA scrutinizes every aspect of your record and has you explain every possible scenario and emergency procedure. Airspace waivers are usually only given to emergency service agencies, news agencies, or other government entities. It took nearly 8 months, but I finally received airspace waivers for both Vero Beach and Fort Pierce. Reputations are hard to build and easy to lose. Make sure you know who is representing you as a service provider. Confirm they are licensed. Make sure they are professional and take the regulations seriously. Check for a drone registration. Professional drone pilots should also keep a logbook documenting all of their flight time. Ask to see it. Most importantly for this area, make sure they have the proper authorization to fly in the area of your listing. If they say they will get your images immediately, chances are they are flying without airspace authorization. If you have any doubts, ask for the documentation.
We are seeing more and more agencies who understand the strict drone regulations taking a proactive approach to ensuring their staff or their agency is not left open to liability. Rather than take the risk of agents unknowingly selecting the wrong pilots for their jobs, the broker or management will review a pilot's qualifications. Upon approval, they designate that pilot or pilots as the agency's approved source for aerial imaging. Honestly, there are plenty of pilots out there who are more interested in making a few dollars than they are about being safe, following regulations, and respecting your reputation. Putting a little effort into making sure you're using the right pilot will go a long way.
Thank you for having me. I hope this presentation was helpful and informative regarding some of the current FAA requirements for operating a drone commercially in an area like Vero Beach. I am always available to answer any questions you might have about commercial drone operation or drones in general. I welcome your calls or your emails. Thanks again.